more on this in a minute. We'll call the hearings individually and then discuss them. We have one matter that's not a hearing, which is a vote to recommend the approval of an application for a preliminary plat. So with that, we go directly to the question of the agenda. Are here any changes to the agenda? Don't hear any. Do I hear a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All right. I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Call the roll, please.
Eric Pedersen,
Here. Aye.
Kevin Holland,
Aye.
Ransom Ellis,
Aye. Sorry.
that's right, Randy Phelps,
Aye. We'll now go into the public hearings. The Planning and Zoning Commission holds public hearings as required by law and provides recommendations. Oh, we did. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Garrett. The minutes for the last meeting, P&Z meeting, May 13th, 2019. Do I hear any correction? Hear a motion?
Motion. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes for the May 13th, 2019 meeting. Call the roll, please.
Kevin Holland,
Aye.
Randy Phelps,
Aye.
Ransom Ellis,
Aye.
Eric Pedersen.
Aye.
Now, the Planning and Zoning Commission holds public hearings as required by law and provides recommendations to City Council on matters relating to land use, planning, zoning, and subdivision of land. Any person who has an interest in the subject matter of a hearing will have the opportunity to provide testimony and present evidence to the Commission during the public hearing. Speakers are required to conduct themselves in an orderly and respectful manner. Disruptive behavior, including applause, yelling, speaking out of turn, or other inappropriate behaviors will not be tolerated. Additionally, the following applies to any person addressing the Commission. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes unless authorized additional time by the chairperson. Speakers must speak at the podium unless previous arrangements have been made by the chairperson. Speakers must legibly print their name and address on the sign-in sheet at the podium prior to speaking. Speakers must begin by stating their name and address, and speakers should speak clearly and into the microphone. The chairperson will announce the subject of the hearing, followed by a report from staff. The chairperson will then open the public hearing to the applicant, followed by those in favor of the application and those opposed to the application. The chairperson will close the public hearing. During this time, the Commission will discuss among themselves. The public may not address the Commission after the close of the public hearing unless requested by the chairperson. The Planning and Zoning Commission shall base their recommendation and/or decision on information and evidence presented during the public hearing. This decision, if required by the application, will be forwarded in writing to the City Council for further consideration. I want to call the first public hearing. It's PD 19-001, 12 Stones. Public hearing and possible vote to recommend the approval of an application to change the zoning classification of approximately 9.1 acres located at the 7,000 block West Farm Road 174 from agricultural to 12 Stones Planned Development District. It's a PDD. Karen?
Thank you. Before we begin, we do have two planned development districts up for consideration tonight. So just to be efficient, I do want to go over just the Plan Development District Ordinance and the purpose of that particular ordinance. So the Plan Development Regulations are intended to allow unconventional and innovative arrangements of land and public facilities, which would be difficult to develop under the conventional land use and development regulations of the city. And there are several parameters to be eligible for a Plan Development District. Number one, the proposed development plan shall involve a mixture or variation of land uses or densities, which cannot be accomplished by following the requirements set forth for conventional development, and which contains aspects of development beyond mere convenience that necessitates a planned development district. Number two, the proposed development plan shall involve the provision of all infrastructure deemed necessary to serve the potential development. Number three, the proposed development shall involve design elements that promote the City of Republic's comprehensive plan. Number four, the proposed development plan shall involve design elements intended to lessen congestion in the streets, secure safety from fire, panic, and other dangers, promote health and general welfare, promote adequate light and air, and to prevent overcrowding of land. Also to avoid undue concentration of population, to preserve features of significance, to facilitate the adequate provision of transportation, water, sewage disposal, schools, parks, and other public improvements. So this particular rezoning application is for 12 Stones 55 Plus community. I do have a short PowerPoint which will go along with the text of my report. The vicinity map, you can see that the area in question is 9.1 acres. It's purple. It's right next to the, it's on 174 here. This is Greene County, this small parcel here, and then Greene County to the east. And this is Oak Court PDD. This is a zoning map of the area. The Oak Court PDD, it's hard to show in this PowerPoint, but this is PDD, which is green slash. We have an area of medium density residential, some commercial, and then also some higher density residential. Down here in the yellow, we do have medium density residential also. And then the last map I'll show, this is the future land use map. I'll refer back to this in just a moment. But it does show that this yellow area, or the light yellow area, is an area of low density single family residential, and that's according to the future land use map. So the applicant is proposing the rezoning of this property to a planned development district to allow for the development of a residential single-family dwelling community for ages 55 plus, consisting of 5 parcels of land, stormwater detention area, clubhouse, public street extension, open and common space, and private street. The development will consist of 37 single-family residential structures. Details regarding the applicant's proposal. We have landscaping and building setbacks. This will become evident on one of the next slides. At north, it's 106 feet from Farm Road 174, south 25, east and west both 25. Individual lot setbacks, these are for the structures themselves. So 15 feet in the front, that's from the street, 25 feet in the rear, and then 6 feet minimum side yard setback. The overall density of the development is 4.1 dwelling units an acre. I do want to point out there was a typo in the report that you received. There was not the 0.1, it was just 4.01, but it is 4.1 dwelling units per acre. The applicant's proposal also includes details regarding stormwater detention. They've included a stormwater detention basin proposed at the southeast corner of the property. Again, 37 single-family residential dwelling units. An extension of the sidewalks on East Timber Oak, that's a public sidewalk, and then also internal sidewalks on both sides of the street, which will be a public street going north and south. That'll be going between East Timber Oak and Farm Road 174. The applicant is not proposing an age-restricted deed as part of this proposal. This is the development plan. You can see right here, this is the actual 9 acres. So we have the north-south, this will be a private street. In the middle there, that is a landscaping area. The private street will intersect with East Timber Oak, which will be an extension of the public street to the west. It'll go all the way through to the east boundary of the property line of the subject parcel. On this, you can see that there are individual footprints for the residential structures. There are 37. So there are 32 on lot number 1, which is designated this larger parcel here. And then there are individual lots down here with the same footprint. Also, the area of detention is located here on the southeast parcel. No details regarding where the outfall will be on the detention basin. What they will have to do as part of the infrastructure drawings for the development, if this were to be approved, is to include details and then the off-site easements that would be required for that detention basin. So consistency with the Plan Development District Ordinance. These are the details regarding the ordinance that I went over before. These are just some recent photographs of the parcel. Again, right now it's just an agricultural parcel. It is empty. These are taken from the Farm Road 174, so both east and west, looking into the property. For consistency with the comprehensive plan does outline several key goals, one of them being housing supply and demand. The comprehensive plan specifically encourages the development of infill housing. That's to promote compatibility between existing and newly developed homes, and also to promote infill opportunities. These infill opportunities are to maximize existing infrastructure. The second is to improve quality of all types of housing in the city. So adopt standards to enhance visual appeal and residential character, and adopt standards for higher density housing to offset perception that higher density housing is lower quality than lower density housing. Consistency with the future land use map. This is the lighter yellow area that I showed you on the previous map, designated as the low density single family residential. So the future land use map, the low density residential designation includes single family residential development at a density of 1 to 6 units per acre. The density of the proposed development is 4.1 units per acre. So that does fall within the parameters of what the future land use map designates for this property. The transportation plan and the water and wastewater master plans were reviewed by staff as for this proposal. The impact on the transportation network was reviewed by the city engineer and staff through trip generation modeling. The applicant submitted a traffic impact assessment as part of the development application. The report indicated an additional 340 daily trips generated by the proposed use. The addition of the daily trips generated by the development increases the trips on West Farm Road 174 to approximately just over 2,000 daily trips, and that's well within the volume of the capacity for Farm Road 174. The water and wastewater master plans, the site is currently accessible by the both water and sanitary sewer services. The development will require looping of the water system from East Timber Oak Street to the city's 10-inch water main, approximately 225 feet west of the property. Off-site easements and construction of the line will be required to loop this system. The applicant is proposing connection to the existing sewer line on East Timber Oak Street, extending east to the property line and running north through the development. The flow from this particular location does go to the Schuler Creek lift station, and it does have sufficient capacity to serve the development. And I want to flip back to the actual development plan just so I can can show you the details of where those locations are. So we have water and sewer down here on East Timber Oak. They will extend all the way to the east property line here, and then both will extend up north through the private street to serve the individual dwelling units. They will be required to tie to a 10-inch main located approximately here 225 feet from the location of the parcel. So there will be just a small main extension of that particular location.
Does the water connect up there too, Karen?
That is the water line that I was referring to. There's a 10-inch, a 10-inch water line right up here. So the looping of the system will actually be all the way, the connection here all the way through, and then back connected to the water main here on East Timber. The other particulars, the property does not contain any special flood hazard areas, so no floodplains on the effective map or on the preliminary maps that will be coming out in a couple of years. There are no actual known sinkholes on the property. Stormwater, the proposal includes a stormwater detention area in the southeast corner of the property of 0.73 acres. It is designed to control the release of stormwater from the development, and then again, off-site improvements will be required. Those will include off-site easements to get the outflow from that detention area to a stormwater drainage system. The infrastructure design, the design of the streets, the sidewalks, water and sewer systems, as well as stormwater, will be reviewed, approved, and permitted during the infrastructure permitting process. Those details are reviewed by the city's technical review team upon submittal of those documents. And then finally, staff does consider the proposed zoning map amendment to be generally consistent with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan, trend of development in the subject area, compatible with surrounding land uses, and able to be served by existing municipal facilities and transportation networks. We are recommending the approval of the application. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'd like to apologize for being late. I totally forgot about the meeting tonight.
You're in good company.
Well, I was first.
All right, we're ready to hear from the applicant. The applicant wishes to speak.
PowerPoint.
Give us your name, and
Kelly Byrne, address is 916 Meadow
you're going to have to speak up for me so I can hear you.
My name is Kelly Byrne. My address is 916 Meadow Lark in Springfield. I'm the applicant. Dave Bodine has done the engineering. He'll be following me with the more technical details. I was asked just to pretty much give an overview of this development as far as what we're trying to accomplish with it. So I've got a quick little slideshow to flip through here to give you a good idea of what our plans are on this. If I can figure it out. You've already seen the site plan. 37 units. Our idea with this is to fill these with 55 plus active independent living seniors. These units are single family in nature, however most of them are on the one large lots. There's not individual lot lines because they are for rent, but they are a higher quality rental product than what is typical. Each unit is about just under 1,400 square feet, single level, no transitions, designed for someone at that point in their life to move around easily. There's a lot of attention to detail for things such as having handles instead of knobs because they're easier to turn, and having the appropriate amount of light in certain places, the appropriate width of doorways, things of that nature. We are currently building a similar property in Nixa. We are completing very soon. We've already started leasing on some units. So I can point to that as an example, and that we're already doing this concept. So there's something very tangible for you to look at. This is a schematic layout of what a typical unit would look like. We've paid a lot of attention to the exterior aesthetics of it. The goal was to get the garages in the back. We have driveways that are actually shared between the units and go to garages in the back, and this allows for a much more attractive street view. I think she mentioned before, it's a private street, so there's not truly the setback, since the street is essentially like a parking lot for all intents and purposes. It's not, and our intent is to have it gated. But the houses sit 15 feet off of the private street, each of them having a fairly large front porch and very attractive detailing in the front of the house. And these smaller houses, when you have a two-car garage on them, if you've never noticed before, tend to look very same thing over and over again when 2/3 of the front of your house is just a big garage door. So we try to pay a lot of attention to get those out. This is approximately what a floor plan looks like. We're not locked in on it yet, but just to give you a frame of reference, they're 2-bedroom units with an office, a laundry room, kitchen, living room, a couple outdoor spaces, limited yard space because it's just not needed for these tenants. They typically don't want anything to take care of. We build that for them. They need a place to let a dog out, sit outside, and enjoy nice weather. Some of these things I've already gone over. There is a common clubhouse listed on that site plan. In other projects, these get a lot of use to gather daily or to have events, celebrate birthdays, play games, whatever it is. Pay a lot of attention to landscaping. Each unit would likely have at least one tree in the front yard, as well as heavily detailed landscaping in the front, just around the homes, and we maintain all of that. The quality of the construction is similar to about a $200,000 home. They have nicer finishes than a typical rental property would. Granite countertops, stainless appliances, things of that nature. This is the one we're doing in Nixa, just to give you a visual of something that we've done in a nearly identical property. These are a little bit bigger and hitting a little bit higher of a price point, but they should give you a good reference of what we're going for. So we'll just flip through a few of the pictures. Like that's it. Can I answer any questions?
I have two.
Sure.
Are they all ADA accessible?
Yeah, we follow those guidelines. And most of that has to do with the places that you
Doorways,
have.
I'm talking about slope of concrete or height of cabinets.
No, to that extent, it's not.
And I noticed it said 55 plus, but can someone explain to me what a deed is that doesn't require 55 plus?
I think that's only mentioned there because the last PDD that the commission heard that was similar to this, they were proposing to submit to the city a deed restriction that would make it to where nobody could live there under the age of 55 plus. So I think that was just mentioned to draw that distinction that this is not like the last one. In case it's being marketed as 55 plus, but the ordinance will not require any sort of age restriction.
Yeah, there's no legal requirement for tenants to be 55 plus. However, for the community to work, we need it to be. We can't move in 30 units as young families and then still rent the other units. So tenants 55 plus, they just wouldn't have the same appeal.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Anyone wishes to, who is in favor of the application can speak now.
Hi, my name is Dave Bodina with Pinnacle Design Consultants, 304 West Erie in Stateville. First, a quick thank you to staff for all your assistance through this, and Karen, especially thank you for going over about 90% of what I thought I needed to say this evening. So, I know we talked about utilities and infrastructure. I won't reiterate what Karen has already said. I do know that one of the biggest concerns, speaking to the neighbors earlier, is stormwater. The City of Republic has stringent stormwater requirements. One thing that it's kind of like the doctor's credo, we try to do no harm. We will, obviously when this develops, it generates more stormwater, but that's the purpose of your stormwater detention requirements, your city requirements, is to limit the amount of, or limit the rate of flow that we can discharge from the developed site downstream. So I know that the neighbors have concerns, and justly should. They've got issues out there now. Whatever happens upstream of this, it will not worsen the impact of what they're experiencing right now. If anything, and if we can, I've talked to the neighbors and would like to meet with them. If anything, we can get together and come up with a scheme downstream to improve what they're going through right now. And basically, that's all I have from a technical aspect that Karen already didn't address. So if you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to address those.
We've got a lot of people to speak, so if you have questions.
I have one. Does your current design exceed the city requirement for storm detention capacity?
Currently, we have no design. The current design is schematic until we get past this phase. When we go through, just as a quick example, if the 100-year storm, if the 100-year storm allowed on the existing land had a 20 cubic foot per second discharge, I would consider a milk crate a cubic foot. So if you can picture 20 milk crates per second discharging out of that, whatever our finished system is will be less than 20. So I guess to answer your question, will that final design, yes, the discharge will be less than what it is now. I don't know to what degree. It may be 99% or it may be 90%.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Anyone else who's in favor of the application wish to speak? All right, anyone that's opposed to the application, please come forward. I guess I was fibbing when I said there was a lot of people that wanted to talk. Just assumed every one of you were going to come up.
We've already talked to him, so we're waiting to see what he has to say.
Trust me, I didn't hear a word you said. It's important, I'll listen. All right, then I'm going to close this hearing out. Gentlemen, you want to discuss?
Where's the stormwater that people are worried about on the map?
Let me see if I can get to it on this one. The stormwater location, the detention basin is proposed right down, right down here in the south east corner.
Okay.
So the neighbors, I think most of them are in Rankin Acres down here, I think if I'm correct. So they have some sheet flow water that's occurring from this field here and probably some from a previous development. And so their concern is with the development of this parcel, whether it will increase the stormwater drainage into their backyards. They have current flooding problems right here.
And over to the left also.
So what Dave is saying, when we get to the point of infrastructure, construction drawings, the stormwater report and the engineering to design the stormwater detention area, the outflow from that basin will be no greater than the pre-development flow. So it will not increase flow out of this area from this parcel from what it is right now.
Discussion, vote?
Is there room for parking? Is there street parking on this layout?
They don't have street parking planned, but they do have enough space for each individual home has the garage in the back and then the actual full driveway. So they'll have parking at least for 2 cars. That is off-site from the actual private drive here. And then they'll have some additional parking at I think it's the clubhouse location right here. So there'll be an actual small parking lot for that particular location.
So there's a strip of grass between the 2 driveways, is that one here, Karen, when you say private?
No, the driveways, the homes are situated such that the driveways are essentially connected. The green space would be on the other side. Yeah.
Yes. Permission to speak?
You may. You didn't use all your time.
Thank you. Karen, we did widen that. We widened the streets north and south of the median from the City Republic standard 28 feet to 31 feet specifically so we could get permission to park to be able to park on the street. Not necessarily have to, but if a visitor comes, they can park on the street. Through the median, that wouldn't be allowed, was per my understanding from the addressing the comments.
So Dave is saying this area right here has been widened, that you could have on-street parking, and then this area right here.
Because that's a lot of homes that I assume they would have friends over at some point, family. Where would they park? I mean, and if they did park, is there congestion down the line or up the line?
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing to consider too is they do have, each residential unit has a garage for 2 vehicles and then the actual driveway space also for 2
That's
vehicles.
shared, right? That
No.
driveway is shared.
Individual. So they're together. They are together. But there'll be enough parking space, I believe, with the garage units, like 4 vehicles.
Plus something, right?
Thank you.
Discussion, motions?
What was the last, that's the loop water system, right?
Yes.
And the last thing we talked about last meeting was pumping the water out, right?
Yes. What you're referring to, one of the, I think the last case that you actually heard, the system was not completely looped.
Okay.
And this system, when I'm talking about the looping of the system, we are actually connecting at one point here with water mains all the way through the development and then connecting to a second location up here on Farm Road 174.
Motion, anyone?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Randy. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to recommend approval of the application to change the zoning classification of approximately 9.1 acres located at 7,000 block West Farm Road 174 from agricultural to 12 Stones Planned Development District, PDD. That was your motion?
Correct.
And the second. Call the roll.
Joni Mitchell,
Aye.
Eric Pedersen,
Aye.
Randy Phillips,
Aye.
Ransom Ellis,
Aye.
Kevin Hahn.
Thanks, gentlemen. Go to our next hearing. PDD 19-002, Fieldstone, public hearing and possible vote to recommend the approval of an application to change the zoning classification of approximately 5.75 acres located at Old Stone Road from Old Stone Plan Development District to Fieldstone Plan Development District. Karen?
Thank you, Chairman. ATW LLC and SBH Development have applied to change the zoning classification of this property. It's 4 lots in the Old Stone Plan Development District. It's very near the intersection of US Highway 60 and Republic Road. So we have US Highway 60 here and Republic Road or M Highway here. This is lot 2, 3, 4, and 5. This is the zoning map of the area. The Old Stone development includes all of this area down here. We have some commercial and some manufacturing across the streets. And then the third map, the future land use map. Again, this map shows the future land use designations of the parcels. This particular area, you'll see it's slightly different colored. This is actually a pink, which is designated as a local commercial. So that would include lot 1 here at the corner and also include lots 2, 3, 4, and 5. It's pink all along here, so local commercial. The yellow is the higher density residential. So the applicants are requesting this change. It is a rezoning from Old Stone Plan Development District to a new Plan Development District called Fieldstone. The proposal consists of 1 mixed-use building with commercial storefronts and residential dwelling units both behind and above the commercial units, and also 2 residential apartment buildings totaling 110 residential dwelling units. The proposal also includes green space and landscaping, a swimming pool, 320 parking spaces for residential and commercial parking. Details regarding the proposal. We have landscaping and building setbacks. I've went ahead and included the proximity to the road. So US Highway 60 to the north, we've got 15 feet. Old Stone Road, 15 feet. Farm Road 103 to the east is 15 feet. And then to the west, we have approximately 10 to 11 feet landscaping. This is actually buffering between lots 2 and lots 1 of Old Stone. For stormwater, they are they are proposing to use the existing stormwater detention area for the Old Stone development. And for sidewalks, there are existing sidewalks on Old Stone Road, and then they will be adding some additional sidewalks. And I'll flip back to the map just so you can see the location of the sidewalks right now that are existing, that are already in, are right here on the north side, or the northwest side of Old Stone Road. The applicant's proposal also includes the 320 parking spaces. I went ahead and broke this down so you can see the configuration of the parking and the calculations for both the residential and the commercial. We have 220 parking spaces calculated for the residential dwelling units. That calculation comes from the 2 parking spaces per unit that are required by our ordinance. And then for the commercial, they've used a retail parking calculation, so 1 parking space per 150 feet. Our required would be 1 parking space per 200 square feet of commercial space. And then we do have the residential density for the 5.75 acres and 19.13 units an acre. This is the development plan for Fieldstone. I'll point out just a couple of things. All of the gray area is actually parking, so we have parking along the perimeters of all of the buildings. This first building here on lots 2 and 3, this is the commercial building. So this will have commercial storefront units right along this. They'll be facing US Highway 60. There'll be residential units along the back, and then also on top of the residential and commercial units. So it'll be a three-story building with commercial storefront along the front, residential along the back and above. The second building over here will be a residential building. We've got a little blue space here. This is a swimming pool for the facility. There's some green space and sidewalk systems throughout the development. And then this third building will be strictly a residential building also. Really quickly, I'll just go over also the details regarding the number of units in each building. So each building will be a 3-story building. The mixed-use building will have 12,800 square feet of commercial first-floor space and 50 residential units. Those residential units will consist of 10 studio apartments, 10 one-bedroom apartments, and 30 two-bedroom apartments. Then the other 2 buildings, one building will have 24 residential units, so 12 one-bedroom and 12 two-bedroom apartments. The third one will have 36 residential units consisting of 24 two-bedroom apartments and 12 one-bedroom apartments, and that's for a total of 110 dwelling units. Several photos, recent photos from the location. So you do see the sidewalk system that I had mentioned right here along Old Stone. This is Old Stone here. You can see across the street. This is from near the corner of 103 and US Highway 60, looking kind of southeast into the development. These are the existing apartments at Old Stone. Moving into the consistency with the comprehensive plan. Like I mentioned before, we have goals and objectives in the comprehensive plan. One of them is housing supply and demand, and this is to encourage development of infill housing and to improve quality of all types of housing in the city. Second, we do have a secondary section in the comprehensive plan. This is for business development and retention. Identified in the comp plan are to expand opportunities for new commercial development. The city should consider rezoning requests for commercial mixed-use development intersections of major highways, and to encourage infill development of vacant commercial land utilizing existing infrastructure. Excuse me, and this would include commercial infrastructure or commercial properties identified in the future land use plan. Consistency with the future land use plan. The subject properties have a future land use designation of local commercial. The local commercial is identified as retail and office uses, including small neighborhood shopping centers and isolated retail businesses. They also include the uses permitted in the corresponding zoning district, which is the local commercial or C1 designation. Local commercial also allows general retail businesses, government-type buildings, office buildings, and residential uses above the first floor or beyond non-residential uses. So residential uses behind those commercial storefronts. The transportation plan, the impact on the transportation network was reviewed by the city engineer during the application review process. The original Old Stone PDD was approved for approximately 48,000 square feet of retail. That's for lots 1 through 5 along US Highway 60. They did supply a traffic impact study at the time of approval of the Old Stone application. It included a weekday trip generation of 3,600 trips generated. The trip generation for the approximately 13,000 square foot of retail that's proposed as part of this application is 1,500. The associated trip generation for 110 dwelling units is almost 600. This results in a total trip generation for the proposed development of right around 2,100. And this is less than the total for the original commercial development. This also leaves plenty of trips available for the potential development of Lot 1, should that ever develop. The water and wastewater master plans were also reviewed for compliance with our current plan. So the site is currently served by City of Republic Water and Sanitary Sewer Services. The development will require an extension of a new water main parallel to US Highway 60 to serve the development and connection to the existing water and sanitary sewer lines on the property. I'll flip back to the map in just a moment and show you exactly the location that I'm speaking of. But there are an existing main on the properties or on the lots that we are speaking of. They will create a looped system for the water, and they will connect to the existing gravity sewer mains on the property. Those do flow to McElhaney and then Schuler Creek lift stations, both of which have sufficient capacity for the development. The 10-inch water line that I was speaking of will be a new water line along this section of US Highway 60. So there will be a 10-inch water line here. It will require a developer's agreement with the city that will be proposed at some time from the applicant to City Council for consideration. So that 10-inch water line will connect. It'll actually go up here to the intersection of 103, back down and connect to an existing water main here on Old Stone. So this will create a new loop system to serve the development. They will actually have water on both sides of the development. The fire department did need water and fire hydrants on this side as well as the existing on this side for this type of development. The parcel does not contain any floodplain. It will not contain any floodplain when we get the new maps in a couple of years. It also does not have any identified sinkholes on the property. The proposal is utilizing the existing Old Stone stormwater area and conveyance system. It was designed for account for the commercial development of lots 1 through 5. It does have sufficient capacity for stormwater. More detailed analysis will be included in the actual development of this parcel as far as stormwater goes. And then infrastructure design, we will require the design of the streets, sidewalks, water, and sanitary sewer systems, as well as stormwater. It'll be reviewed, approved, and permitted through the infrastructure permitting process, which does get reviewed by the technical review team. Staff does consider the proposed zoning map amendment to be generally consistent with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan as I've laid them out. Also the trend of development in the area, compatible surrounding land uses, and we are able to serve both with water and sewer and our existing transportation networks. Staff is recommending the approval of this application, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Question?
So our road 101 maybe not like necessarily widened, but maybe widened eventually.
I can't say for certain one way or another. It wasn't identified as a project when Old Stone was approved to widen that. And we do have a portion that is in the city up here, and then there is a good portion of the road that is Greene County's.
Was there a traffic study done on that intersection to the Republic Road?
This intersection right here?
Just
Or
lower,
this intersection?
yes, right there. Just so close to the intersection, and obviously traffic with high school and how busy that street is becoming as a
Right.
artery to Springfield.
The Old Stone PDD was this entire area, so it was the lots 1 through 5, this area, the commercial designated area, and then all of the apartments. This road was put in as part of that PDD, and they did do a transportation impact study for this entire development, which included all of the apartments and then the commercially designated area up here, and that's how that road was actually designed to account for that. So this wasn't studied per se; it was included in the design of the actual overall development. So those impacts, I'm sure, were addressed in the initial transportation study.
I know several months ago we did a we had a large conversation on a development just south of there, and they had an exit onto Republic Road right there, just south of there. And that was a major concern with speed, traffic, water, shed, and stuff like that. So I don't want to say assume, but you have those same factors if you just go a little north in that intersection. So.
Yes, and if we hadn't had a transportation study that addressed this area as commercial that was approved previously, we would have required a transportation study at this point. So if that had been all residential and they were changing into commercial, we would have required that for this type of application. But since it was all commercial and the trip generation is higher, we did not feel like it was necessary at this point.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hear from the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Brent Stevens with H Design Group, and I'm actually in a unique situation. I am the architect on the project, and I actually own a portion of the land, so I have a vested interest in this project and to see this go through. What I want to do is just kind of give you, there's some renderings that, and I think she's pulling them up, but they were passed out. These are basically kind of give you the flavor of what that mixed-use commercial multifamily project will look like. Sideways.
Is it just one small?
No, it's
There's
both sides.
we can refer to this if you prefer. But basically, you can see that we've got, like Karen said, commercial on the first floor, multifamily units above and behind the front facade. We've kind of got a front head-on view of that large building. In that shot right there, you can see that it is 3 stories. We wanted to match the existing size and dynamics of the project behind it. Like I said, the commercial in the front. In this particular building, we will have internal corridors, elevators, so this will be a different product than what's out there. It won't be the typical exterior breezeway type project that's out there, at least in this building. The second shot, if you scroll down, gives you a little bit better concept of how the apartments are set back from the face of the commercial. They are definitely back towards the back half of the project, and then the apartments go all the way down to the ground on the back of the project, and then they utilize that back parking lot. So it does separate residential, people that live there, their parking, with the commercial that has their parking up front. And then the last picture is just kind of a night shot. I think the point here is to show that there is a lot of interest with a lot of commercial tenants. I'll let these guys talk about that. We've been talking to different restaurants, different personal service type stuff. The concept provides a dynamic mix of commercial space and living units that will help to feed each other and bring some real excitement and energy to this prominent gateway intersection for our community. The traditional box retail industry is changing. We've seen that in a lot of our work all over the country, to be quite honest. People are design trends are shifting away from the box commercial retail industry with the online purchasing and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of design trends towards these mixed-use concepts that live, work, play in the same type of area. I did want to mention something that Karen talked about briefly, just to give a brief history here. The current PD basically allows these front portions to be governed under the C1 zoning classification. The only reason, and we meet that because, as she had mentioned, residential uses under the C1 zoning classification are already allowed to be above and behind, which is how we designed this. The reason we're coming to you, quite frankly, is because we have exceeded the number of units that was in the original PD, so we needed to come to you to amend that. And I will just tell you that successful development is very market driven. there is a market in Republic, Missouri for multifamily housing, so why not supply that demand with a higher-end mixed-use development in a non-confrontational area? There are no neighborhoods complaining, no neighbors complaining about this project because it's really not in anybody's backyard. It's up there, front and center. So, we have two other speakers that I'll let speak about some of the other things, but do you have any questions for me?
Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, my name is Sean Cogney. I live at
You're gonna have to speak up.
Good evening, my name is Sean Cogney. I live at 5281 West Center Drive in Springfield. I am the owner of DPW and the developer of the project, and also the developer from the existing Old Stone project back in the back. And I'd just like to describe our project a little bit for you. Brent did a pretty good job of starting with that, but I'd like to expand on the gateway concept of it. The east corridor coming from Springfield into Republic, it needs a little bit of work out that way, and we really think this is going to put a frame around it and be just a world-class, pretty project. You mentioned that we're talking with restaurants and service industry folks, so we've got some good interest so far. One of the questions in the opening there was about the traffic study and the traffic patterns. So when we originally did the development here, we helped out with the highway there. We did the deceleration lanes coming off of M Highway there onto 60. We completely redid the stoplight. We actually did the deceleration lane coming from Republic towards M Highway. So the 150 or 200 foot long deceleration lane that turns to go to the school. And we also did an acceleration lane leaving M Highway towards 60 going east as well too. So there's many other things that we helped out with, storm sirens, those kind of things. So I wanted to alleviate worries about the traffic. So I can answer any questions for you.
Any questions?
Go ahead.
I'd like to thank you for reinvesting in the public.
We try. It's a good spot, and the staff has been wonderful to work with on this whole application. We wanted to thank them for this day. Thank you very much.
Anyone else wanted to endorse this project?
Ross Murray with Army Murray Company at Springfield, 2225 South Blackman Road. I'm here going to be doing some of the marketing arm and advertising for some of the commercial space. We've been marketing this property for 13, 14 years with very little success. And as they just alluded to, with the volatility in retail right now, we feel like this project is going to be the best suitable as the gateway entrance to the city of Republic. We've got numerous amounts of interest in the commercial end for space that hopefully will feed off of the mixed-use component to this development. And I'm also here to answer any questions about it. But as we said, we've downsized it from 19,000 feet to 12,000 square feet in hopes to get some service-oriented retail, light restaurant use that will complement the residential dwelling units up above, and offer hopefully some different features that within this development that other developments do not have in the city of Republic. So we're excited about being brought on as the marketing arm for the project. But I'm just happy to answer any questions that anybody had in regards to the commercial aspect of the project.
Questions, gentlemen? We're good? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to be in favor of this proposal? Let's move to those that are opposed to the program, to the proposal. Anyone wish to speak in opposition? Seeing no one come forward, I'll close the hearing, move to discussion. Any discussion, gentlemen? Motion?
I'll make one to approve.
Thank you, Randy.
DPW /SB development.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve recommendation for a recommendation of approval of the application to change the zoning classification of approximately 5.75 acres located at Old Stone Road from Old Stone Plan Development District to Fieldstone Plan Development District. Any discussion on the motion? Call the roll, please.
Kevin Han.
Aye.
Eric Pedersen.
Aye.
Ransom Ellis.
Aye.
Randy Phelps.
Aye.
Kenny Mitchell.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for your presentation. Next item of business is SUBD 19-009 MT Farms. Possible vote to recommend the approval of an application for a preliminary plat for Highway 60 Business Center located at 3456 South Farm Road 101 at a commercial subdivision consisting of 62.57 acres and 4 lots in Phase 1. What we have here is a little bit different. This is not a public hearing. This is a discussion among us as to whether or not we'll vote. I note for the record that we have a memorandum from Larry McConnell, the applicant, dated Monday, June 3, 2019, which we will attach to the official record of the meeting, and we'll consider. I'm sorry. Oh, it's to Larry McConnell from Karen. I'm sorry.
And there are two of them, just for clarification.
To what?
There are two memos that were included on your packet. One on May 13th, and then one on June 3rd.
Okay. For the complete record, it's in the C section. May 13th. The second memo dated Monday, May 13th, 2019, from Garrett Tyson to Larry McConnell. Will also be included. Okay, gentlemen, discussion. Oh, Karen, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, they want to.
All right, tonight for this, we will be discussing the US Highway 60 Business Center subdivision. The question at hand tonight is whether to approve the preliminary plat for the proposed major subdivision. And the question that you need to answer tonight is whether the preliminary plat document conforms to the adopted regulations and plans of the city and other agencies of jurisdiction. So basic requirements for preliminary plats, we have the conformity to the zoning code. This does include bulk dimensions, conformity to the subdivision regulations, including minimum standards for plat document itself, and then minimum standards for public improvements, conformity to other adopted plans of the city, including land use, transportation, water, wastewater, etc., and then conformity to MoDOT requirements for improvements to all state routes. This is the preliminary plat that was submitted. A couple of items that I'd like to point out. We do have, it's approximately 60 acres, so this is US Highway 60 here. The plat itself identifies 4 platted parcels or lots within the subdivision. So we have lot 1, 2, 3, and then lot 4 over here. We have an area of open space stormwater detention located between lots 2 and then lot 4. And then the remainder, which is this area here, exclusive of lot 3, and this area here, designated as future development. I'd also like to point out there are several characteristics of roads in here. So we have a new public street intersection here going north. This is from a new intersection with US Highway 60. We have a short cul-de-sac and street on both ends of this short segment of street. And the plat indicates a segment on either side of those cul-de-sacs as future road. What we have here is the major thoroughfare plan for the City of Republic. We have a closer in. This is the parcel here. So we can see this is the railway line. This is US Highway 60. This future major thoroughfare plan designates a future roadway system identified by the dashed lines here. Going back to the plat, the applicant is proposing the entire parcel, the 60-some acre parcel, to be subdivided for general commercial use. It illustrates again the 4 lots, public streets, public infrastructure, the stormwater easement, and then this future area of land development. The 4 lots and common area are proposed to be accessed by a new public street that intersects with the existing US Highway 60. That is this intersection here. The remaining 32 acres designated as future development appears to be served by an unspecified extension of public streets. That would be this here and this here. Presumably other utilities would be designed and platted at some point in the future to go along with the future streets and then also the development of this future area of development. The City of Republic's subdivision regulations require a preliminary plat to be submitted and approved for any major subdivision prior to the construction of any public infrastructure to serve the development. The preliminary plat is intended to illustrate the proposed layout of all lots and all associated improvements to serve those lots, as well as any other jurisdictions within our area. So that would include MoDOT. If the preliminary plat is approved by resolution of the City Council, the developer is granted the conditional right to develop and subdivide the property according to the preliminary plat for a period of 2 years. If the developer proposes to stage the construction and subdivision of the land into separate phases, they may indicate that on the preliminary plat. And upon final platting of the first phase, that extends that 2-year period for an additional 2 years. So what we've got here with these areas of future development is a deficiency in accordance with the preliminary platting procedures and the preliminary platting ordinance of the City of Republic. So all we have identified in the 62-acre parcel is 4 areas. They're identified as lots, a very short segment of public street to access those particular lots, associated utilities just for those particular lots, and then no compliance as far as the actual subdivision of the remainder of the property in accordance with those adopted plans of the city. Any preliminary plat covering the layout and design of all phases, again, it does need to include details regarding this future developed area. The future development indicated here for this area and this parcel here is not an option for preliminary platting. The reason for this is that public infrastructure, including the transportation systems, the water, sewer, and stormwater systems that serve the development, operate as a system that interacts and must be coordinated together. Those systems also interact with the larger systems, sometimes on a regional scale, both of our water, sewer, stormwater, and particularly the transportation systems of the region. The city cannot provide or guarantee a conditional layout of design for only a portion of a parcel's preliminary plat. In the case of the Highway 60 Business Center, the absence of a complete layout and design for the entire subdivision leaves several critical issues unresolved. Given that the subdivision is served by an expressway class thoroughfare, this is US Highway 60. The planning of transportation improvements is especially important to both the City of Republic and our region. The submitted preliminary plat illustrates public street access via right-in, right-out public street intersection with US Highway 60. That is this intersection right here. The future street sketched on the plat document does not meet the major thoroughfare plan, so that would be this segment of the road here, and then also this segment here. A previous version of the preliminary plat proposed a more complete design of the subdivision, but did not satisfy all of the requirements of the standards of the City of Republic. And this version of the preliminary plat does not also meet the requirements, and it also worsens some of the conditions. This area in red is the area that is not, no details regarding the development of this, so this particular area into lots or the transportation street extensions on both sides here. The yellow line indicates what would be required to be in compliance with the major thoroughfare plan. So our ordinance does require the extension of the public street all the way up to the boundary line of the parcel to serve future development of this parcel. We also have that secondary network that was seen on the major thoroughfare plan that extends. It's about 440 feet from US Highway 60, and it's parallel. It also has a new street that is perpendicular, so it would move this segment of the farm road here to a little bit west, so that we can have a 90 degree intersection here. This intersection also requires some type of improvements in the future. Not only the moving of this street segment to intersect with the US Highway 60 in a perpendicular fashion, but this street intersection here with this farm road and US Highway 60 will require substantial improvements. So our final analysis, the required public improvements for the subdivision as required by our subdivision regulations and other adopted plans of the city must be included on the preliminary plat. So that does include those road systems and the public infrastructure to serve the lots. And then it also includes those details that are missing regarding that future development of the 30-some acres. The US Highway 60 Business Center preliminary plat does not include the public improvements that are required of the subdivision regulations or the adopted transportation plan. It also is incomplete and does not conform to the subdivision regulations or the major thoroughfare plan. Finally, staff is not recommending the approval of the preliminary plat for the US Highway 60 Business Center. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
What property is directly north? Is this north?
This is north. These are farm fields up here owned by the Raider Trust.
Got the tractor barn on this other intersection back to the west.
VLP would be right here.
Tractor barn's maybe 8 miles farther east.
Okay, Larry.
Yeah, it's further this
Bridge
way.
is coming over.
Right beside the big road back there, right?
Ken, are those decelerations and accelerations on 60 proposed for MoDOT?
No, there are none shown here.
None shown there?
Karen, I believe there is. I believe that's what those are.
I tell you what I'm gonna do is, offer you the opportunity in just a minute to talk, because, I think it's fair and we got time, so I'll give you an opportunity in just a minute, and I'm sure these guys will wanna ask you questions then. Thank you. Anything else?
Not unless you have
Oh,
additional questions.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I don't believe that the deceleration lanes are indicated on here. They would be right here. And then an acceleration lane right here. I know it's difficult to tell here, but if you'll refer to your packet, they would be labeled right where you see the general utility easement text. It would be in that particular area for the acceleration lanes going west, and then where you see the GIS, the data coordinates for the deceleration lane coming into that right in, right out. That's where it would be, and they are not indicated.
Would there be a light there?
I'm sorry?
A light?
a light. They're not proposing a light at this intersection. What this is a right-in, right-out. So you would only be able to come into the development through this, so you would be coming towards Republic and be able to enter on this public street right here. And the only way out of the development would be to exit the same way and go again on US Highway 60 towards Republic. So if you wanted to switch directions, or if you were coming from Republic and wanting to go into the development, you would need to go up here to the median break at the Farm Road and make a U-turn, cross 2 lanes of traffic, and then get over here into the right lane to make that right in, right out. And then if you wanted to go out of the development back towards Springfield, you would have to do the same thing down here at this Farm Road. You would have to make a U-turn against 2 lanes of traffic, and then back towards Springfield.
Other questions? Mr. McConnell? One of you one of you gentlemen want to speak? I'll give you 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Tyler McConnell, and I reside at 3456 South Park 101. The property we are discussing, I live there, which won't be if we change it. I'm glad you brought up stoplight. We thrown out the idea. MoDOT doesn't want that. Karen Tyson, can I say we've tried every intersection idea there is? I mean, we've looked at roundabouts, we've looked at J-turns. You know, we've looked at every intersection I believe possible to do something different. And none of them sufficed. And we're talking about incomplete plat, and I'm super confused about this because, hey Karen, can I use one of your slides?
Yeah.
Can you bring up the one that had the yellow roadway on it? So, we went with that idea, and they didn't like it. Am I wrong? Showing that with the road to the far east, you know, connecting, moving that over and using that, and it wasn't liked, or am I wrong?
I can answer that now. I'm sure he'll give you more time on your 5 minutes. So,
Sorry, I just, you know, we've been working on this for a year, and yeah, if we could have just a couple minutes to discuss, if there's ideas that you guys have that maybe you want to see changed, or, you know, I'm open to any and all input, and we're not opposed to changing anything. If it's what makes it work, that's what we'll do. So, thank you, guys.
yeah, I think, can you hit next again, Karen? Okay, so this plat that they've submitted only shows public improvements for transportation, what you see here in the gray, right? What the point about the incomplete plat is, when you submit a preliminary plat for a major subdivision, you have to plan the infrastructure for the entire subdivision. Now, you can phase that, but you still have to design the entire subdivision. In this case, what they've done is they've designed a portion and then left this red area as future, you know, and that's our regulations. So you have to design the whole thing, and then if you want to phase it, you can phase it. And then if you do phase it, you still have to, you know, make say you don't have to necessarily secure, but you've got to make provision for all of that infrastructure. Okay, so if any of this looks familiar, it's because we have considered this preliminary plat before. I don't recall the timing, but it may have been 6, 7, 8 months ago now. So if you recall, that design, and I believe this is what Tyler's referring to, that design looked more like you see here. It was the entire 60 acres. I don't believe it had the 90 degree.
I think they used the angled one.
That's correct. I think they were planning to use this 103. So that was one of the deficiencies we noted at that time, was that this needed to be corrected to a 90-degree angle. And then it was the design of this intersection that became problematic. That became a hurdle, along with this realignment. There was a couple of other deficiencies, if you remember. I would consider the rest of those to be minor. I would consider these two deficiencies to have been major on that former preliminary plat.
I think you're right. I think that was right.
That would be handled by MoDOT engineering, right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, they'll have the what say what's gonna go out there.
Correct. So designing this to a standard that would satisfy MoDOT's requirements, it didn't happen.
Perpendicular road.
That's correct.
I think that was the main issue.
Perpendicular was a main issue for the city,
Yeah.
and then the design of the signal was a main issue for MoDOT. To Tyler's comment about trying a lot of different designs, they did propose a roundabout, they did propose J-turns, and I believe proposed a couple of variations on the signalized intersection. None of them were projected to be able to perform to meet MoDOT standards. What we're dealing with now on the current preliminary plat is essentially that those same problems still exist. And so that's why we're making this point about this being incomplete is it's got to be handled one way or the other, but it's got to be on here. And it's got to be, so once you complete the plat, right, and you put all of that in, you've still got to bring this like this, and then you've still got to wrestle this bear right here, right, which I think would be the problem. Of course, you guys would be, back to the drawing board at that point trying to wrestle with this. What we have done in recognition that, like, it's worth noting, although we're recommending the denial of this plat for all of these reasons, it's worth noting that the reason this is, one of the reasons this is such a bear, there's two parts, there always is there's traffic generated from the development, but there's also traffic that's already there, right? So you've got to deal with both. So what I'm saying is not everything that makes this such a problem is necessarily generated by this development. Some of it, you could argue, is the responsibility of the public. The question is, what is the public going to do at this intersection to try to alleviate some of this problem, to make this an easier thing to wrestle with? As of that last consideration of this plat, the answer was we have only a plan and nothing programmed, right? No money going to this, and no program to send money to it within the next 5 years, which makes it, the problem just persists. What we've done since that time is we've partnered with MoDOT to commission a study of this whole corridor in order to try to figure out what is best to do about an intersection like this. And that study will commence probably within the next 30 to 60 days or so, and then hopefully within a relatively brief period of time we'll get some answers back from some professionals who can evaluate the whole corridor about what do you do about this. And then how can we pay for it? And that's the real big question mark. If private development wants to happen here like this, and the public agencies don't have the funding to be able to do something here to try to alleviate this problem, then it all falls on them to have to deal with. Now, some development, like the applicant from Old Stone was mentioning earlier, that all fell on them, and they just paid for it. Of course, that was a different time in the economy, but they paid for it. They redid the stoplight, they added the frontage road, like equivalent to this. They did all of that on their own dime. Okay, in this case, figuring out how to design this and then how to fund it is a problem that doesn't get resolved easily. So the point for tonight is that this plat, it doesn't get us there. And unfortunately, getting us there may take some time on the public side of it, unless the private side just says, hey, fine, we'll just pay for whatever that is. But even then, we still have the problem of figuring out what is that going to be. And to Randy's point, that will be a MoDOT question. But the designs that were proposed previously didn't get us there. So I say all that, so forget everything I just said, because we're here tonight to vote on this particular document. This particular document is incomplete for the reasons of it doesn't handle it. Just like the last one didn't handle it, this one doesn't handle it sufficiently.
And I respect what you're saying. Obviously, something like this would benefit Republic greatly. And I do think the last attempt was a little more clear than this one. But to say something like next time, they could have the perfect layout, everything perfect on their side. It would still come down to MoDOT. At one point, it would come down to MoDOT and not anything they did.
You could bring
bring this to a 90, you could get just like you're saying, you could have it all laid out perfectly, and you would still have to deal with this. And dealing with this, it has proven to be problematic. I'm not saying, maybe somebody walks in the door tomorrow and says, I got the answer, but that hasn't happened yet, and certainly isn't
So
illustrated here.
it's not the money from MoDOT to make, it's also the figuring out.
It's both.
Okay.
It's both.
Same thing happened years ago on the other side of Republic. Wasn't with the big development, but it was whatever street it is over there by the PDD that we did on the other side where we redid those intersections. They went into 60. Frisco Square, but not Frisco Square. It's before you get to Frisco Square on the way out of there. Went across, one of them goes across the railroad track, and they closed one, Miller Road. They closed Miller Road.
Closed off.
Because they came in at an angle.
Frisco Square Village.
So we're just here to vote and not make any recommendations to the developer.
And that's the only reason I continued to talk was, I mean, I would hate to see you guys throw it up like 20 times and you're waiting for MoDOT. I mean,
Well, and if I could address that real quick, yeah, I'm $100,000 deep into this, but can I say MoDOT is okay with the right-in, right-out for the acreage we're proposing right now?
Yep.
Because when we had that meeting with Chad, they weren't opposed to it, to my knowledge, of the right-in, right-out as we were looking at now, they were okay with it.
Yeah, so.
So
and this
MoDOT
is-
was okay with us doing this small of acreage count with a right-in, right-out only. And they didn't want to stoplights and impede traffic until we came up with a better idea.
Yeah, that's
Even with the people making U-turns across 2 lanes of 60 highway on both ways.
yeah, that's tough.
Well, I mean, we're just at a real loss of better ideas, I guess.
I truly understand, feel sorry for you.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you got
There's,
I think you gotta wait till you get the study back from MoDOT.
I mean, it's always possible that MoDOT may come in there and put a frontage road on the inside of that to alleviate traffic or move traffic, which I don't know that they'll do that, but might buy part of your property, I don't know. A lot of things are possible, but
I know it's the same engineer that did the other piece of property up the road. Is that Mr. Link?
I believe Larry did this one, but they're the same company.
Same company?
Is that right? Larry drew this
Yeah,
up?
yeah, Larry.
We need to do some more homework for this customer.
Well, we've had numerous traffic studies done, and there's no great answer. I mean, there's honestly not. But that's why we came here tonight, we cut back on our acreage to try to where there would be less traffic involved, less risk. You know, instead of trying to go for the whole 60 or the whole 90 that we own, or the whole 186 acres that is allotted together, we're coming in at maybe 20, 23, I think, somewhere in that ballpark. You know, so we're really scaling this back, trying to find something that works. So I guess that's all I really have to say, unless there's something else that I can answer for you guys.
state representative to talk to MoDOT.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we've had numerous, I mean, and they've been there for all, we've had numerous meetings with MoDOT trying to come up with a solution, and there's not a great one. So,
Well, I think we're all on time. We'd like to see it go. We just gotta make sure it goes the right way.
thank you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, Larry, take care.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you guys.
Larry McConnell, I live at 5578 West Farm Road 164, Brookline. Sharon, is there any way you can pull up the other plat that we filed before it was turned down?
We can. We can.
Somebody look at the clock or the glare on my bald head that bothering you.
It's the PDF in the middle, Connie.
Right there.
No,
It's
up,
PowerPoint.
up, down, right there.
Right there.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah. I remember seeing it still, they use the angle.
Okay, this was a plat you guys turned out a while back, and we were told if we scaled it back to what MoDOT would approve, that it shouldn't be any problem. And this is basically the same thing as just approved at Old Stone, less than a half mile from this property. You basically approved the same thing, dump high traffic out on the M Highway or Farm Road 101, which is gonna come out on 60 Highway. Right. Where was I? Oh, I done something. But anyway, it's gonna be right in here. That should be 101 right there, which is where you just approved to let the Old Stone property dump into it and come out on the 60 Highway. You know, if we use this plat, we could tie into 103 and part of the traffic could come out on 103 like you approved for Old Stone to do on 101. So it's kind of the same thing. We were told that if we scale back, that it could probably go through. If we scale back to what MoDOT told us we could safely develop and put out onto the highway, and now we're told we've got an incomplete plat when we had an original plat for the whole 60 acres of Stone Commercial. The intersection onto the highway does not have a acceleration lane because of MoDOT. They felt that it would be unsafe for people to pull out and start going down the highway and picking up speed, and somebody could switch lanes, and somebody trying to go in, and you could have an accident. I've done a belief for the traffic study on my own, and in the last year, from 60 Highway at Main Street to James River, there have been 61 reported accidents on that stretch of road. At the peak traffic in the afternoon, from 4 till 6, there has only been 7 reported accidents on the westbound lane on 60 Highway. And most of those, they were at M and 60 there in front of Come and Go, at the stoplight. The majority of the accidents happen seems like at Oakwood and Republic, where Republic Ford's at. There were several down by Come and Go by Elm Street. But 6 accidents there at 60 and M relates to 1% of the accidents in that area. So, and those are all at a controlled light. They weren't at a turn in and out. So we would like to get started developing this. You know, we need something that we can put out and try to market a little bit. We don't know whether it would develop, those 4 lots would sell in a week, or they'd sell in 5 years. We have no idea. We've already put over $100,000 into this just in studies and architecture designs for plats and things of that nature. And so we're confused. We were told to come back with a smaller plat, and now we're told we've got too small a plat. So what's the correct answer? I kinda feel like that with what you just approved at Old Stone is basically the same thing that we're asking you to approve. It's very, very similar. The, things that we're looking at there, just to throw out some brief ideas, we've had a movie theater. We've had a baseball group that does baseball training for kids. Our plan is to try to do some things that could draw revenue not only to the city of Republic, but also draw jobs. I don't know if any of you are aware of the statistic that the city of Monette doubles in population in daytime because they're so pro-growth and pro-business. But, we're just trying to get something started. We don't know what the answer is. The plat that we come back to, we left I believe that's lot 9 there on the corner by 103. We left that area open so that if MoDOT comes in and agrees to do something there, that we wouldn't have to worry about having a lot that we might have sold or somebody might have built a business on. We left it open in that area open intentionally so that the highway could be improved if so needed be. But I really myself just cannot understand the difference between this and what you just approved. So if anybody's got any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
I don't have any questions.
Connie, can you pull up the preliminary plat that's under review?
For the one for tonight.
No, I just want to make sure that this is the one that, while you have your discussion, this is the one that's under review.
I just want to make a few things clear for the commissioners. Like Karen just said, she pulled up the plat that's under consideration for tonight. That's this plat here. Although we've looked a lot at the other plat, that's not up for consideration tonight. I'm sure we're all aware of it. I just want to make sure and point that out. The second thing I wanted to point out was dealing with MoDOT, because there seems to be some confusion about MoDOT's role and our role. The city's role is for land use. We decide the land use as far as the subdivisions, the zonings, those type of situations. MoDOT controls the access in and out from their MoDOT controlled road. So although MoDOT might give the approval for a smaller area, such as they did in this case, it still does not meet the requirements that the city requires for our preliminary plat approval. MoDOT doesn't control our land use. MoDOT doesn't control our zoning, just like we don't control MoDOT's entrances and exits either from the highways. So I just want to make sure that there's a distinction between those two, so that even though MoDOT says, yes, this will suffice, it still does not meet our ordinances, and it still does not meet our codes when it comes to that. And then the third point, and Garrett can probably speak to this more if any commissioners have any questions about it, is the connotation that this is the exact same that Old Stone was that was just approved, the intersections. They're not the same intersections, and I'm sure Garrett can speak to why those are not the same intersections. I just don't want there to be any confusion between the commissioners as far as what our ordinances are, what our roles are, and what has been spoken to tonight by the applicant.
Yeah, the Old Stone development benefited from what was already an improvement to US Highway 60, existing signalized intersection, already realigned to a 90-degree Republic Road to US Highway 60 intersection. So they had a development site that adjoined as if, imagine this proposal, but this was already solved. That's what the position Old Stone was in when they developed. So although I can see on the surface maybe there are some similarities, but that is the big distinction, is that the improved intersection was already there. In this case, it's not. So the vast majority of that traffic was going to in an already improved situation, whereas this is a site where that improvement still needs to be made.
All we're voting on, as I understand it, assuming I get motions and seconds, all we're voting on is the preliminary plat that's before us tonight, not the one that was previous, just the one tonight. And that plat has to meet the requirements to be a plat. I mean, that's an initial procedural requirement. So the motion, I think, if there's going to be one, needs to be in the positive, to recommend approval, with a vote of yay being to recommend approval, with a vote of nay being to not recommend. Is that correct, Scott?
That's correct. So either recommend approval or recommend somewhat denial. It would be easier to understand it that way, so.
Do I hear a motion?
Make motion if we did neither.
No, make it in the positive. That doesn't mean you have to vote for it. All you do is, the motion has to be in the positive, in my opinion. So the motion would be to recommend approval.
And then it will come up for a vote.
Recommend the approval of the application for a preliminary plat for Highway 60 Business Center located at 3456 South Farm Road 101, a commercial subdivision consisting of 62.57 acres and 4 lots in phase 1. Oh, is that okay?
That'd be fine.
You're welcome.
I'll
Jared?
second.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Again, a vote of yea would be to recommend approval. A vote of nay would be not to recommend approval. Call the roll, please, Connie.
Tony Mitchell,
Nay.
Randy Phelps,
Nay.
Eric Pedersen,
Nay.
Ransom Ellis,
Nay.
Kevin Horn.
Nay.
Sorry, gentlemen.
I appreciate your time, sir.
I'm sorry. We can't reform what you have.
Yep.
And I'm sorry that you're having the problem with MoDOT. It's,
Well, we're not getting any help from city staff.
we didn't approve it. I get it. Okay. Next item of business. Any citizen participation? You're always here. You never say anything, but it's okay. Community Development Department update.
Thank you. You have 2 sheets before you. The residential building and inspection project report. Just very quickly, in May, we had 11 new single-family residential building permits issued. We had 106 residential inspections and 11 commercial inspections in May. The second report is the TRT project report. This lists all of the commercial projects and subdivisions that are reviewed by the technical review team. We have had several plans come in the month of May. We've had Meeks Warehouse, which is a rebuild project of one of the buildings in the back that was damaged by a storm previously this year. That was issued today. We also have a new daycare at 205 West Hine Street that is currently in first submittal review. We do have a special use permit that'll come up for your consideration in July. That's for Dynamic Strides, and then several subdivision projects, including Monte Cristo 7 was issued an infrastructure permit, so they are currently under construction. And we also have a new preliminary plat for approximately 20 acres near South Forest Lane. That's currently in first submittal review. That may be on the July P&Z agenda. And then the very last thing I'm going to point out, the 2019 project descriptions. This is just a very short synopsis of each of those major projects. So all of the commercial building projects and then the subdivision projects. And if you have any questions on all of that, feel free to ask.
Dunkin' Donuts.
We have not heard officially from Dunkin' Donuts, so it is not currently under review. All I know is what the sign says outside. So,
Yeah, I have.
We did hear officially.
Breakfast sandwich.
oh, we did?
Yeah.
I did not.
It's
so.
it's the, they called and gave a statement for the.
Okay.
Actually, maybe I should show, maybe their request was to not say anything. Anyways, they called, it's gonna be the Baskin Robbins Dunkin' Donuts combo, is what they're gonna do.
Hilarious deal.
We can't.
Can
Yeah,
we
that's-
talk about this? Okay, that's what I want to know.
Not on the agenda.
Not on the agenda.
Sorry. But what is the comprehensive plan update?
I'll keep it very, very brief. We're making a lot of interesting progress on that right now that will hopefully bring to you guys in a digestible form. But the engineering firms are wrapping up their projections of future water and wastewater distribution networks. So as soon as we've got that in a final form, we'll certainly present that to this group, and that ought to give us some really good visuals of future growth for the community. And then at the July meeting, I know I promised it would be at this meeting, but they wanted to do some further tinkering to some of their planning items. We'll have the presentation in July from the Parks and Recreation Department as to some of their visions for future parks and recreation facilities over the next 20 years.
Final order of business, adjournment. Somebody want to make a motion?
No second.
Call the roll.
Eric Pedersen,
Aye.
Kevin Hahn,
Aye. Opposite here.
Ransom Ellis,
Aye.
Tony Mitchell,
Aye.
Randy Phelps.
Aye.